Hi, welcome back to Dry Hollow Homestead. We just picked purple pole beans. We are going to can them together. We're going to snap these beans and we are going to pressure can them today. That means that we are going to need a pressure canner. Any low acid food you have to put in a pressure canner. You cannot water bath can. It is not complicated to use a pressure canner. It's just a little intimidating at first, but we will walk through it together. I have an All-American and it can All-American pressure canner, and it can hold 7 quarts. So I have washed up 7 quarts of canning jars, and it does not matter if they are all wide mouth or you can have a mix, narrow mouth and wide mouth. It doesn't matter. I used to think you had to match them all. It does not matter whatsoever. So we're going to finish this job. While I am doing this, I am actually going to get on the stove. I have in my All-American pressure canner, I have 2 inches of water. I am going to not latch it. I'm just going to kind of set it here and turn the heat up on 7, 8, like medium high, high heat. We want this to start getting very hot water. It doesn't have to be boiling, but let it have time to raise get the temperature nearly boiling. Also, I've already washed up the jars. You do not have to wash your jars or sanitize your jars anymore. They have come out with a new guideline. As long as you're pressure canning, that is not a necessary step anymore. You also should go ahead and get another small pot. This is maybe 10 cups in this of water on to boil on another burner with your canner. When we do green beans, we are going to fill your jar to 1-inch mark with your snapped green beans. Then we are going to, I always add a teaspoon of salt. I'm not sure if that's optional or not. You can look that up in your canner book. Any of your pressure canners are going to come with their own manual. Please read your manual. Every canner is a little bit different. The model does different things. There's different brands. Presto is another brand that is popular. All-American is very popular too. So we're going to, hold on, fill up to 1 inch from the top. Then we're going to add water to 1 inch from the top. This is actually, if you can see on your jar, if you go right to this rim, that is 1 inch. So you would put, I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt in each of these jars and fill it up with water to the 1 inch mark. Our water has come to a boil. We are ready to fill our jars very carefully with the hot water. I might not have enough water. If not, I'll start boiling some more. Another tip is, if you have hard water, which we have well water, we do have hard water, put a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of white vinegar into your canner with the water that's already hot in your canner. I will add that also. That will help so that you do not have the hard water staining on your jars, and you just have to wipe that off. There's a residue that will be on there if you do not do that. But if you take the time to put just a little bit of vinegar in there, white vinegar, before you can, you will not see that issue. And then it just saves you some time because you don't have to wipe it off. Okay, jars have all been filled up, all 7 quarts, because that's what my pressure canner can take at one time. This pressure canner also has already been lined with the metal rack that came with it to keep the jars from being straight onto the bottom of the canner. On the bottom, that's in there. You can see it's getting very hot in here. The canner has very warm water. We are going to now get the air bubbles out of our cans with green beans and hot water and salt. That's what we have in here. So you run your device. I use a butter knife because that's what I have. Sometimes I use chopsticks. People say to be careful doing this because you'll break it. Never done that, but maybe there's stronger people than me. And now that you have all the air bubbles out, you will take your lid. Does not need to be kept in boiling water. And now they say just to wash with hot soapy water, good and clean. This is a narrow mouth. I'm going to set that on top and take a ring. When they say finger tight, that's what all canning instructions will say. It means as tight as you can without cranking down. Once we have it like this, the water is very hot. I'm going to start loading my canner. So this little tool is very handy. I will put them in there. I can, like I said, 7 quarts will fit in here. And we'll move on to the next step. Okay, putting the last jar of beans into the canner. That is all 7 in there. We will pressure can this at 10 pounds of pressure for 25 minutes for quart jars. It's all American. Lid is heavy. There is a marker here and here. These two need to line up. Then you will twist it on. When you are cranking down your All-American, you're going to do these handy little nuts, bolts, whatever it is. You're going to crank these nuts, they're nuts now, cat a corner to each other. First, you're going to just kind of make sure that you've got everything the same distance. You don't want to have one side that has a huge gap and another side that has a little gap. You want them to be this lid to look the same all the way around. Put these up, then crank it down. I still have the heat up on medium high. We've got all, and when you crank, you always crank like opposite sides at the same time, okay? I'm not like hurting myself doing it. That's good enough. Now, the next step is to keep this up on high heat. We are waiting until we see steam coming from this little valve. Once we see steam come, we will set a timer for 10 minutes, not adjusting the level of heat. We're gonna keep it up on high, building up pressure right now. It's spewing water every now and then. It's getting very close to having steam come out. I'll show you when that happens. Maybe that's a better angle that you can see steam coming out continually. I started the timer for 10 minutes. Once that 10 minutes is up, I will put our weight on. Okay, our timer just went off. Steam has been coming out for 10 minutes. I haven't touched my burner temperature. It's still up on high. Now we have to put our weight on. This weight has 3 different holes. Each hole has a number above it. There's a 10, a 5, and a 15, 5, 10, 15. And for me, at my altitude, which is 0 to 1,000 feet, like it's a smaller altitude, I need to put 10 pounds of pressure. In order to do this, I will find the 10 pounds of pressure, the hole right under it. That is what I'm going to put on top, okay? This is what is a little scary. It's really not, but there we go. So we have our weight on, and we're watching our pressure gauge. We have left the burner up on high. We're watching that pressure gauge till it gets up to 10 pounds of pressure. 10 pounds of pressure for 25 minutes is what we need to can green beans in quarts. If you are doing pint jars, you're going to do it for 15 minutes. Same pound of pressure. Pounds of pressure is actually according to your altitude. So you need to look that up. Here in Virginia, we are not in a high altitude environment, so we just do 10 pounds of pressure. So we will let that come up to pressure. When it does come to pressure, when it gets up, the gauge gets up to 10, on the All-American, this weight will start to jiggle when it does get up to 10 pounds of pressure on your gauge. That's when we're going to adjust the heat to keep it jiggling, and you'll hear it. It'll be a little bit loud, so I'll try to tell you this now. When you hear it jiggling 2 to 3 times a minute, you are at the right spot. You don't want to hear it like rocking back and forth, very loud, just, spewing and not hardly sitting still. It's up too high. So you want to keep it rocking 2 or 3 times a minute, and then you can start that timer once we get there. So I'll bring you back. Our pressure gauge shows us that we are at 10 pounds of pressure. You're going to be able to see our weight start to jiggle. That's the sound it makes. You want to hear that. You want to have it do it 2 to 3 times a minute. So I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes and turn my oven down. I have a sweet spot on my oven. That's about at a 6.5, 7. I have a 0 to 8 or 0 to 10 oven element. So it's like medium high. That's what works really good. You want to hear it stop jiggling, you know, 2 to 3 times a minute is good. So we can set our timer, and these are processing. There is no steam escaping around any other part of the lid, just here. This gauge, as it's going higher, the pressure is building up. It's trying to let off a little pressure through that gauge. That's what you hear, the rocking. So you want to hear it do that, but you do not want to hear it do it the whole time. So you'll get used to it. Hopefully you heard this in your grandmother's or great-grandmother's kitchen, and it brings you back to when you were little. Okay, our timer just went off. These have already processed for 25 minutes. The next step is to turn your burner off. Do not touch anything on your canner. Go ahead and turn that burner off. And we are going to be watching this and not touching it until it gets all the way down to 0. This will gradually let the pressure off. Okay, the pressure has come down to 0 on our gauge. We are safe to take our weight off. This is not scary anymore because there is no pressure. We know that there's no pressure. It's not going to blow up in my face at all. So we are going to, this is going to be hot, so don't just put your hand on it. Ask me how I know. Take a something, towel, whatever. Pull that pressure off, letting out a little bit more. Your pressure gauge off. Okay, so the weight is off. That's hot. It's very hot. Now we can start to unscrew our nuts. We're going to go catacorner to one another. Just loosen them at first. Like I said, this does not have pounds of pressure that's just going to spew out and explode on you. We're going to loosen all of these nuts. Take our lid off. When you do take the lid off, there will be a little bit of steam, so don't put your face right over it. You're going to push it to the side, and then we can lift it off. Set it over to the side. Now we're going to let these cans sit in here. This only has 2 more. I have, I don't remember how many I've done altogether. We're going to let these last 2 just sit in here till they cool off. I would give them 30 minutes and then we'll pull them off. If you take them straight from your hot canner to your counter, they can siphon. I've never had that happen. People say it can. So I always just take the time to let them cool a little bit longer in there, and then we will be listening for the pop. That means that it has sealed. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes. I'm going to get these last 2 out of the canner. They're still going to be pretty hot. They need to sit on the counter for 24 hours before you put them in your storage, like your cellar or whatever you're going to have. These I pulled out yesterday, so they are ready to go. The next thing you need to do is take your rings off. You should never store any kind of canning with the rings on with your lid, because you can get a false seal. You might have something happen to this seal, but because you would have this ring on, it would make you think it was still sealed. It could make another seal, a false seal. So you never want to store it with the rings. Go ahead and take the rings off once they've cooled. This is after 24 hours. This was yesterday's. You can lift it by the lid. It's good. It's sealed. I haven't heard the popping, but I've been in and out for a while. So you take off the rings after 24 hours. You can go ahead and put them in your storage in your cellar. I hope this helped you guys not feel quite so intimidated by pressure canning. I would love to answer any questions you have. Please put them down below. You can do this. We need to reclaim this for our families. There was a generation before us that let this go. We need to get it back. We want to shorten that supply chain, our food supply chain, to, guess what, about 15 feet from my back door. this food, these green beans have never left our property. So you can do it. We can do new things. Just let me know what pressure canning videos you would like to see. I do a lot of bone broth, and pizza sauce is one of my main things I do, but you do not need a pressure canner for that, but I will show you that sometime. Stick around, and God bless.